Most people assume geography is a backdrop, a silent stage on which human ambition performs. Mountains sit still, rivers flow where they always have. Borders are drawn later, by choice, by war, by will. History, we are told, is written by decisions, not by terrain. But some landscapes do not merely host decisions. They press against them. They narrow the range of what feels possible. They reward certain instincts while punishing others. Over time, they do something quieter and more enduring. They teach a society what to fear and what feels necessary to survive. Central Europe offers one of the clearest examples of this pressure, not because of a single mountain range or river, but because of an absence. A wide, exposed plain, few natural barriers, long distances between defensible lines. To stand in this space is to feel how open it is, how difficult it would be to seal, how easily movement flows across it in every direction. For centuries, this openness shaped how safety was imagined and how threat was understood. The question is not whether geography caused history. It is whether it slowly trained perception, whether repeated exposure to the same vulnerabilities produced recurring patterns of belief and response, whether fear, once learned, can become tradition. To understand this, it helps to remain literal at first. No symbolism, no moral overlay, just placement. The lands that would become Germany sit between regions that were often stronger, older, or more consolidated. To the west, organized states with access to the Atlantic. To the east, vast territories with depth and manpower. To the south, mountains that protect but also isolate. To the north, seas that invite trade but also exposure. There was no single, obvious refuge, no natural enclosure. Movement across these lands was historically easy, not only for armies, but for ideas, peoples, and pressure. Invasions passed through, empires collided. Borders shifted often enough that permanence itself began to feel fragile. Over time, this produced a pattern, not a plan, but a disposition. Safety was rarely experienced as stable. It was something temporarily achieved, then threatened again. Security felt conditional, dependent on position, reach, readiness. The land did not promise protection. It demanded vigilance. This is where the pattern begins to deepen. When a society grows accustomed to exposure, it often becomes preoccupied with anticipation. Not what is happening, but what could happen next. The horizon matters. Distance matters. What lies beyond the visible edge carries weight. The future is not neutral. It is potentially dangerous. In such conditions, restraint can feel risky. Waiting can feel like surrender. If threats tend to arrive from elsewhere, then space itself becomes suspicious. Unoccupied territory is not empty. It is a gap through which danger might pass. Expansion, in this logic, is not desire. It is preemption. This pattern does not announce itself loudly. It accumulates. Each generation inherits stories of past incursions, past humiliations, past moments when hesitation proved costly. These memories do not always remain factual. They condense into impressions. The land is open. We are surrounded. Delay invites loss. What begins as geography becomes belief. Yet this belief does not produce clarity. It produces tension, because expansion carries its own costs. The more space one tries to control, the more edges one must defend. The more neighbors one acquires, the more uncertainty multiplies. Security pursued through movement often creates the very instability it seeks to escape. Here, the pattern reveals its recursive nature. Fear encourages expansion. Expansion increases exposure. Increased exposure intensifies fear. The cycle does not resolve itself, it tightens. Across centuries, this rhythm repeats with variations. Different rulers, different systems, different justifications. But the underlying anxiety remains recognizable. A sense of being positioned in the middle, never quite at rest. Neither island nor fortress, always between. This between condition matters. Societies that live between larger forces often develop a heightened sensitivity to balance. Small shifts elsewhere feel magnified. Changes beyond the border feel personal. The outside world is not distant, it is immediate. Over time, this immediacy reshapes patience. Long-term ambiguity becomes harder to tolerate. There is pressure to define, to secure, to stabilize, even when stability is elusive. When geography offers no natural pause, psychological pauses also become difficult. This does not mean every response is inevitable. It means certain responses feel more plausible than others. Certain narratives gain traction more easily. Stories that promise enclosure, certainty, or decisive movement resonate because they seem to answer an inherited unease. In this sense, geography does not trap through force, it traps through repetition. The same vulnerabilities encountered again and again encourage similar solutions, even when those solutions fail. Each failure does not discredit the impulse. It often reinforces it. If the attempt did not work, perhaps it was incomplete. Perhaps it did not go far enough. This is how patterns survive contradiction. There is another layer here, quieter but just as influential. Living in an exposed space can produce not only fear, but identity shaped around endurance, a belief that survival requires discipline. That order must be maintained tightly because disorder spreads quickly. That cohesion is not optional, but protective. Such beliefs do not emerge from doctrine alone. They emerge from lived conditions. From the experience of being crossed, contested, reorganized, from watching borders redraw themselves within a lifetime. The land teaches that solidity is rare, and so it must be enforced where possible. Yet enforcement, too, has consequences. When internal order becomes a response to external openness, flexibility diminishes. Dissent can feel dangerous, not merely inconvenient. Variation feels like weakness. The margin for uncertainty narrows. Here, the ancient pattern becomes visible. Fear of openness leads to attempts at closure. Closure creates rigidity. Rigidity struggles in a world that remains open. The environment does not change. The response hardens. What makes this pattern enduring is not that it is correct, but that it is coherent. It explains anxiety. It offers direction. It converts vulnerability into action. Even when outcomes are disastrous, the underlying logic remains intact, waiting to be reactivated under new conditions. Time does not dissolve this logic. It compresses it. Each era inherits not only the land, but the memory of how the land felt before. The sense of being watched from all sides. The pressure to move before being moved upon. At some point, the pattern begins to feel less like a choice and more like fate. Geography becomes destiny, not because it dictates events, but because it shapes expectation. What people believe is likely influences what they prepare for. What they prepare for influences what they bring about. This is where the inquiry turns inward. If a landscape can train fear over centuries, how much of what we call intention is actually inheritance? How often do we mistake learned urgency for necessity? When does preparation become provocation? And more quietly still, how many expansions, in history and in life, are attempts not to dominate, but to escape a feeling of being cornered? The pattern does not belong only to one place. It repeats wherever openness meets insecurity, wherever exposure is remembered longer than safety, wherever the past whispers that waiting is dangerous. The land does not speak, but it leaves impressions. These impressions settle into habits. Habits become patterns. Patterns feel natural, and what feels natural is rarely questioned. Perhaps the most unsettling thought is not that geography constrained Germany, but that it taught a lesson that could not easily be unlearned. A lesson about movement as protection, about space as threat, about fear as a guide. When we look back, it is tempting to search for turning points, moments where a different choice might have broken the cycle. But patterns formed slowly do not break quickly. They erode only when their assumptions are examined. not when their outcomes disappoint. The question that lingers is not historical alone. It is structural. When conditions repeatedly reward a certain response, how free are we to imagine alternatives? And when fear has been practical for so long, how do we recognize the moment it stops being useful? The land remains where it is, open, central, exposed. But the deeper terrain is internal now, a map of expectations shaped by centuries of repetition. History records what happened, geography explains where, but patterns reveal something more elusive: how perception hardens, how meaning accumulates, how the past quietly rehearses the future. And once a society learns to see the world as a narrowing corridor, even wide spaces can feel confining. If this reflection resonated with you, you can find more explorations like this on Timeless Questions, where history, power, and human nature quietly intersect.